Alright guys, how you doing? Coach JJ Morris here, S8. Today we're going to talk a little bit about lateral force production and lateral ground force at that. And more specifically, why we do ultra wide box squats and ultra wide sumo deadlift, and why wide stances are such a big part of what we do here at S8. And you know, to make it simple, to make it real basic, you know, for athletes and parents and coaches to understand, look at it like this. In reality, gravity's forcing us straight down to the ground, right? So that's like our main resistor. The human body has to generate a certain amount of force, right, to separate itself from the earth. And whether that force is straight up as far as vertical power, or whether that force is, you know, lateral or linear, like a side jump or a forward jump, or even taking off out of the blocks and moving ourselves forward, just about any movement you do, the primary resistor is gravity. But think about it like this. Why do we lift weights with certain mechanical positions? Right? Because of leverage, right? We know that we're going to get better leverage on certain weights with certain mechanical positions for our body. So that's been deemed the most ideal form, right? And that's how form came about. Like, so when someone says, okay, this is the most ideal form, it's because of mechanical leverage and how efficient the body is able to now leverage the joints and the length of the limbs to move a certain weight. Okay, this is a simple physics and mechanics. But for some reason, people are having a hard time understanding why max effort and dynamic effort, wide-based movements are so important for us. And to really make it simple, what you need to think about is this. If I'm driving myself down a mound, right? I have a little bit of a hill, so I have a little bit of mechanical advantage there. But in reality, every single pitcher that I've ever watched in the game of baseball, right? Even if they start this way, they're gonna turn to the side, they begin their warm up here, and it's lateral, or their cocking position here, and it's lateral force production on this back leg, driving themselves down the mound, right? And then they're gonna hit with that bottom foot, it's gonna plant, and there's two places that the force can go. It can go into the ground, right? And then you can get some of that force to come back up the body and transfer it through the upper body and out the arm. Okay, so the hard part for most people to understand is like, okay, well, why does deadlifting 600 pounds with a sumo stance make somebody, or give someone the potential, I should say, to throw harder, right? And it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that just by going in there and having a bigger deadlift or a bigger wide stance box squat is gonna make you throw harder. But what it's going to do, okay, and this is what you must understand, right? What it's going to do, if this is the ground, and let's say this is the mound right here, and I have a pitcher, okay? He's in his wind-up position. I'm a terrible drawer, so just bear with me, right? As he loads this leg, and he then drives himself this way down the mound, he's literally creating force, separating his body from the earth, and getting momentum, right? He's moving his body. We would probably all agree that going out and pushing a heavy truck, right? The most amount of effort is required when you first got to get the truck moving, right? And then you have inertia, right? And then once the truck is moving, you're just cruising with it, right? It takes a small amount of force production to keep the actual vehicle moving. That's why when you slam on the gas to get a car going, there's a ton of torque, and it's sending all this power to the drivetrain, to the tires, down to the earth to get the car moving. Okay. The same thing applies. You guys are thinking about moving the baseball. You're thinking a 5-ounce baseball. How does that make me throw any harder if I go deadlift 600 pounds? Because when you move against gravity, whether it would be up if you were jumping, right? Or if it's linear in a lateral position when you're driving yourself this way, you have to create a certain amount of separation from the earth, right? And you know what's pushing you down? The forces of gravity are pushing you straight down to the ground, and that's a fixed number, right? And you're also a human that weighs a certain amount. So let's say I'm talking about higher level baseball players, probably most guys above 180 pounds, right? To get their body moving at a certain velocity down this mound and separate from the earth, right? Create separation and get themselves to be able to push themselves down the mound, it takes a hell of a lot of force to do that. It takes a large amount of force production to be able to accelerate myself forward and get myself moving, okay? Otherwise, stronger guys generally wouldn't jump higher, But in most times when you're dealing with athletes, the more powerful athlete, the stronger athlete, right? If he is stronger than his body weight, or if he has a higher relative strength, he can jump higher or run faster. Why? Because he's able to defeat the fixed forces of gravity more efficiently, with less effort. So I'll even talk to some of you old school baseball guys and coaches that maybe don't agree with the fact that we live in the weight room and build great baseball players. Well, guess what? You want effortless power? What's gonna take more effort? The kid who goes to pull 300 pounds off the floor and his max deadlift is 400 pounds, or the guy who goes and pulls 300 pounds off the floor and his max deadlift is 600 pounds. You know the answer. The guy who is stronger can move lighter weights faster, okay? If I put more horsepower in a Ferrari, it weighs 2,800 pounds. If I add an extra 50 or 100 horsepower, I can move that car faster, as long as what I did to the car doesn't weigh more than the actual resulting horsepower that was added, okay? So there's a fine line between adding mass and the truth. Yeah, there is truth behind the fact that mass equals gas, because that aids in the force that ends up behind the baseball or the bat. But in reality, the key is getting max effort ability. Force production is really all about accelerating the body, because you guys are so stuck in throwing the ball. Well, guess what? You know why injury rates have soared over the last 20 years in baseball? Because everyone throws with their arm. Everyone thinks about throwing the ball. Everyone thinks about throwing and driving their arm and pull downs on the baseball as hard as possible. And in fact, the first part in the throwing action, whether it's a crow hop, whether it's you just take something in the infield and you go to get it back to first base, doesn't matter where you're at, you turn the body and you separate the body, you accelerate the body first, and the arm follows through. The arm is just an extension of the body, right? And when you get acceleration with the human body, you've broken the forces of gravity. Now you can drive your body in the direction that you want to throw the ball. Okay? Do me a favor, go out back and try to step backwards and throw as hard as possible. Okay? What happens? You're not going to throw near as hard, probably not even 30% as hard as you could if the direction of your force, of your body, right, goes in the same direction of the ball. Why is that a fact? Everything that we do, if I sprint, my direction of force has to go in that in forward, straight ahead, right? If I'm jumping, my direction of force is up. If I'm sending a ball this way, my direction of force has to go that way, and I'm breaking the ground. If I'm a 200-pound man, if I can break ground with 400 pounds, breaking ground with my own body is that much easier. Take the same 200-pound man. Now he can break ground with 600 pounds. Guess what? He can elevate his body that much easier. He can separate from the earth that much easier. Okay? Throwing, swinging a bat, anything athletic, and especially the throwing sports, javelin, shot put, hammer throw, these are transfer of power sports, right? You're creating ground force, right? And you're generating that force to separate your body from the earth. Once you've created movement with your body, then you release the implement that you're throwing. It doesn't matter if it's 10 pounds, if it's 16 pounds, if it's 26 ounces, or if it's 5 ounces. The body moves first. There is not one throwing sport on earth where you stand stationary and just use the arm. Even a quarterback steps into his throw. Every single throwing sport that you can imagine, at least that I can imagine, or that athletes that I have trained, they accelerate the body, and the tool or the implement that leaves their hand is literally leaving the body after acceleration has been created. So if you want to decrease injuries and you want to increase the productivity or the maximal velocity or maximal power output of your athletes, you must stop thinking about the 32-ounce bat or the 5-ounce baseball. You must look at the human body on this mound or in the batter's box. What is happening with the body? Which direction is the body going? Right? Is the body attached to the ground the entire time, or does a leg come up? And do they separate themselves and create momentum? You already know the answer here. This is why sumo deadlift and ultra wide box squats are so powerful, because it is a laterally driven sport. You drive yourself laterally and then move transversely. You rotate through a plane and then you release it in a straight ahead fashion. It is not a linear sport. It's laterally driven and transferred into a rotational situation. Okay? You guys have to wrap your head around this. As soon as you do it, it will all make sense. And whether you throw a 16-pound shot put or you throw a 3-pound bowling ball, or you throw a 5-ounce baseball, or you swing a 30-ounce bat, or a 10-ounce tennis racket. Whatever you're doing, if you create momentum with the body, you break gravity's hold on your body, you break from the earth, and you elevate your body in a direction, you accelerate your body in a direction, then, and only then, can you transfer that power and that acceleration, or that speed even, through to an implement. The stronger guy can be more effortless in his throws. Don't believe me, watch any discus thrower, any shot putter, any javelin thrower, okay? The basis of our programming is all the conjugate system. It is literally a conjugate system to a T. And one step further, we sprinkle in what the Eastern Bloc and what the East German throwers have done, okay? It doesn't matter what implement you're throwing, what implement you're swinging. It doesn't matter the weight. The concepts of physics are the same. The requirements are different. Okay? A shot putter needs a higher level of max effort than a baseball player. However, the baseball player, especially in America, needs a phenomenal amount of maximal effort because they have none. They have no maximal strength or absolute strength. You must develop it because when kids come in and they can barely squat or barely pull 200 pounds off the floor, they cannot accelerate their body, so you know what they do? They throw with their torso. They produce no force, they have a short step down the mound, and they throw with their upper body, they throw with their torso and their arm. And you know what happens? They tear UCLs and labrums and rotators. Why? Because the entire torso and shoulder unit is functioning as one. It's flying through a range of motion that has no transfer of power that should have come from the ground. It's all generated from the hips up. And this is furthermore, this is why obliques are torn, because there's no level of training, no base level of general physical preparedness to develop the abs, develop the structural muscles in the erectors, to develop the glutes, the hips, and the hamstrings, the things that provide lateral force production, produce force in the direction that I play the sport. This is what you guys must understand. And this is why we have been so successful with ultra-wide sumo deadlifts, ultra-wide box squats, from high blocks, high boxes, low boxes. We mimic the joint ranges and the joint angles that the athlete's going to perform in, and we focus on the forces of, or the directions of force that the athlete is going to be required to use within his sport. I'll talk to you soon.